Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something pretty crucial, but maybe a bit behind the scenes. SOC engagements and reports. I
Right.
mean, think about it. You use an app, you shop online, your money's managed somewhere. Chances are your data isn't just sitting with the one company you think you're dealing with.
Exactly. It gets passed around, outsourced.
So the big question is, how do you know it's actually safe? Especially when it leaves that main company.
And that's precisely where SOC reports come in. They're kind of the unsung heroes of digital trust, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
They give companies confidence and hopefully give you confidence that the partners they use are handling everything right. Your financial data, your privacy, is it secure? Is it handled with integrity?
So our mission today really is to untangle all this, break down the jargon, figure out why these reports matter so much for trust in, well, our super connected world. We want you to have those aha moments.
Absolutely. It can seem technical, but the core ideas are fundamental to how businesses operate safely today.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is a SOC engagement? Why do we even need these reports? You mentioned outsourcing.
Right. At its heart, it's about a relationship. You've got the user entity that's the company using the outsourced service.
Like, say, my company, Apex Solutions.
Perfect example. And then you have the service organization. That's the outside company actually doing the work, maybe handling your payroll, hosting your data, processing payments.
So, like Secure Sync Inc., handling Apex's payroll or cloud hosting?
Exactly. SecureSync Inc. brings their people, their tech, their specific know-how. Think payroll processors, cloud providers like AWS or Azure, credit card processing companies, even outsourced IT or customer support.
Okay, so Apex Solutions hires SecureSync Inc. SecureSync handles sensitive stuff like employee salaries or customer data. Why does Apex need a specific report? Can't they just trust them?
Well, trust but verify, right?
Yeah.
Apex, and critically, Apex's own auditors need solid information about SecureSync's controls,
Controls meaning,
meaning the safeguards they have in place. How are they designed? Do they actually work day to day? Is the payroll data protected? Is the cloud service reliable and secure? This info is absolutely vital for Apex to understand its own risks.
okay, so it's about risk assessment for the user entity.
Precisely. And that's where the SOC report, System and Organization Controls Report, comes in. It's performed by an independent CPA firm, the service auditor.
Independent being the key word there.
Crucial. They follow specific standards, usually from the AICPA here in the U.S., to examine those controls objectively. It's that third-party validation that builds genuine trust.
Got it. User entity, service organization, independent auditor checking controls. Now, you mentioned it gets interesting. There isn't just one type of SOC report.
Correct. There are three main flavors, each with a different focus. Let's start with SOC1.
Okay, SOC1, what's that one about?
SOC1 is all about internal control over financial reporting. So back to your example, SecureSync Inc., handling Apex's payroll.
Right, that directly impacts Apex's financial statements.
Exactly. If SecureSync messes up payroll calculations or controls, it could cause a material misstatement on Apex's books. So the SOC1 report provides assurance about those specific controls relevant to financial reporting.
And who gets to see this report? Apex, obviously?
Yes, Apex's management, SecureSync's management, and importantly, Apex's financial statement auditors. But that's it. These reports are restricted use. You won't find a SOC1 posted publicly online.
Okay, restricted use, focus on financial controls. That makes sense. But like we said, data security, privacy, that's huge today. Where does that fit? Is that SOC 2?
You nailed it. SOC2 tackles those concerns head-on. It focuses on controls related to what are called the trust services criteria.
Trust services criteria. Sounds important.
They are. They cover 5 key areas: security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Think about SecureSync Inc., hosting Apex's customer data in the cloud. Apex needs assurance on all those fronts.
Absolutely. Availability is the service up. Security is the data safe from hackers. Confidentiality, are they keeping sensitive info private? Processing integrity, are transactions processed correctly? And privacy, how are they handling personal data?
You got it. And like SOC1, SOC2 reports are also restricted. They're meant for parties who understand the service organization's system, like Apex and its partners or regulators. They contain a lot of detail.
So not for the general public either. What if a company wants to give some general assurance to, say, potential customers without sharing all the nitty-gritty details?
That's where SOC3 comes in.
Uh-huh.
A SOC3 report is also based on those trust services criteria, security, availability, etc., just like a SOC2. But it's a general use report,
Beaming.
meaning it doesn't include the really detailed description of the system or the auditor's specific tests and results. It provides a high-level summary and the auditor's opinion. Because it's less detailed, its use is not restricted.
So SecureSync Inc. could put a SOC 3 seal or report on their website.
Exactly. It tells the world, hey, an independent auditor looked at our controls based on these trust principles, and we met the bar. It's for users who need assurance, but don't need, or perhaps wouldn't understand, the deep dive of a SOC2.
Good to know there are also, you mentioned, even more specialized ones, like for cybersecurity or supply chains.
Yeah, the framework is flexible. SOC for cybersecurity looks at an organization's enterprise-wide cybersecurity risk management program, and SOC for supply chains focuses on controls relevant to manufacturing, production, or distribution systems. It shows how the SOC concept can be adapted.
Okay, this is clarifying, but now another layer. Type 1 versus Type 2 reports. I hear this distinction causes some confusion.
It can, but the core difference is pretty simple. It's about time. Think of it like this. A Type 1 report is a snapshot, a photograph.
Okay.
It looks at the design of the controls. Are they suitably designed to meet the objectives as of a specific date? So the auditor might say, as of June 30th, SecureSync's controls for payroll processing were designed appropriately, just at one point in time.
A snapshot. Got it. So Type 2 must be
A video. A Type 2 report covers a period of time, maybe 6 months or a year. And it looks at two things: the suitability of the design A&D, the operating effectiveness of those controls throughout that period.
So not just if they were designed right, but did they actually work consistently over, say, January 1st to June 30th?
Exactly. Did the controls operate as intended, day in and day out, to achieve the objectives? For something critical like payroll or cloud hosting, Apex Solutions would almost certainly want a Type 2 report from SecureSync Inc. It gives much stronger assurance.
That makes complete sense. You need to know it worked yesterday and the day before, not just that it looked good on paper one specific day.
Right, and it's worth noting, SOC1 and SOC2 reports can be either Type 1 or Type 2. The user entity usually decides what level of assurance they need.
Yeah.
But a SOC3 report, that's always a Type 2.
Always Type 2 for SOC 3. Why is that?
Because it's a general use report meant to provide ongoing assurance to a broad audience. A snapshot in time wouldn't really cut it for that purpose. They need to know the controls were effective over a period.
Okay, so what's actually in these reports? If Apex gets a SOC1 or SOC2 from SecureSync, what are the main sections they're looking at?
There are a few key components common to both SOC1 and SOC2. First, you'll have management's description of the system. SecureSync management describes the services, the processes, the controls, the whole setup.
Their story of how things work.
Pretty much. Then you have management's written assertion. This is a formal statement from SecureSync management basically saying, yes, our description is fair, the controls are designed properly, and for Type 2, they worked effectively during the period.
Okay, management's view, and then the auditor's part.
Right, the crucial piece.
Yeah.
The independent service auditor's report. This contains the auditor's opinion on whether management's description is fair, the controls are suitably designed, and, for Type 2, operated effectively.
And the big difference for Type 2 is
only Type 2 reports include the detailed description of the service auditor's tests of controls and the results of those tests. That's where you see the evidence, the sampling, what they looked at to conclude the controls were actually working over time.
Gotcha. That's the proof in the pudding for Type 2.
Exactly.
Now, going back to SOC2 and SOC3, you mentioned the trust services criteria. Let's unpack those a bit more. You said CAPPS.
Right. CAPPS is a helpful mnemonic for the 5 categories.
Protecting information that's supposed to be kept secret.
Like trade secrets or sensitive customer lists?
Yep. Availability. Making sure the system and data are accessible when they're supposed to be. No unexpected downtime.
Crucial for cloud services.
Absolutely. Processing integrity. Ensuring system processing is complete, valid, accurate, timely, and authorized. Think financial transactions or data processing.
Garbage in, garbage out, or worse.
Right. The second P is privacy. How is personal information handled? Collection, use, retention, disposal, does it meet privacy commitments and regulations like GDPR or CCPA?
Hugely important today.
And finally, security. This is the big one, often foundational. Protecting the system and information against unauthorized access, disclosure, damage. Basically, preventing breaches and misuse.
Security seems like it would underpin several of the others.
It often does. Given the tech dependence and cybersecurity threats we face, security is almost always included in a SOC2 scope. The other criteria might be added depending on the specific services offered and promises made to customers.
So these criteria, They don't exist in a vacuum, right? How do they relate to broader frameworks for, like, internal controls?
Great question. They align very closely with a well-established framework called the HENEOSO Internal Control Integrated Framework.
To OCOS, I've heard of that. Committee of Sponsoring Organizations.
That's the one. COSO provides a blueprint for designing, implementing, and assessing internal control across an entire organization. It has 5 components: control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities, and 17 underlying principles.
So the trust services criteria build on COSO.
Exactly. The trust services criteria essentially adopt the 17 COSO principles and then add more specific criteria tailored to information systems and the 5 trust categories. For instance, COSO Principle 12 is about selecting and developing control activities. The trust services criteria add supplemental criteria under that, focusing on things like logical and physical access controls, system operations, change management, and risk mitigation specific to IT environments.
Ah, so it takes the general COSO framework and makes it specific and rigorous for IT and data controls.
Precisely. Plus, there are even more granular criteria specific to each category: availability, A series, processing integrity, PI series, confidentiality, C series, and privacy, P series. It ensures a really thorough assessment against best practices.
Okay, so the auditor does all this testing against these criteria. Then what? How do they deliver the verdict? You mentioned their opinion.
Right. After gathering sufficient evidence, the service auditor forms their opinion. They evaluate if management's description is fairly presented, if the controls were suitably designed, and for a Tech 2, if they operated effectively over the period, all based on the relevant criteria, either financial reporting objectives for SOC 1 or trust services criteria for SOC 23.
And are there different types of opinions? Like, is it just pass-fail?
Not exactly pass-fail, but there are different grades, let's say. The best possible outcome is an unmodified opinion, sometimes called an unqualified opinion.
The gold standard.
Yep. That means the auditor concludes that in all material respects, everything lines up. The description is fair, controls are designed well, and for Type 2, they worked effectively. That's the clean bill of health Apex wants from SecureSync.
Okay, but what if things aren't perfect?
Then you get into modified opinions. There are basically 3 kinds. First, a qualified opinion.
Qualified. Sounds like good, but
That's exactly it, except for the auditor found an issue, maybe a misstatement in the description, or a control deficiency that's considered material, meaning it's significant enough to matter, but it's not pervasive. It doesn't fundamentally undermine the whole system description or all the control objectives.
so maybe one specific control didn't operate effectively for part of the period, but the overall system was okay.
Could be. The report clearly explains the except for issue. Then there's an adverse opinion.
That sounds bad.
It is. An adverse opinion means the auditor found issues that are both material A and D pervasive. They conclude that the description isn't fairly presented, or the controls aren't suitably designed or operating effectively. It indicates significant, widespread problems, a major red flag.
Definitely something Apex would not want to see.
Absolutely not. And finally, there's a disclaimer of opinion.
Meaning they just don't give one.
Right. The auditor states that they cannot express an opinion. This usually happens for one of 2 reasons. Either they couldn't get enough evidence to form an opinion that's called a scope limitation, or they weren't independent.
Ah, the independence requirement again.
Critical. So the type of modification, qualified, adverse, or disclaimer, really depends on the nature and extent of the problem the auditor finds. Okay, this web gets complicated. SecureSync Inc., our service organization, might not do everything themselves right. They might use other vendors.
Very common. Those are called subservice organizations. It's any vendor SecureSync uses whose services are likely relevant to the controls at SecureSync that impact Apex, the user entity.
So if SecureSync uses, say, DataGuard solutions to manage the physical security of their data centers, DataGuard is a subservice organization.
Exactly. Because the physical security data guard provides is critical to the overall security commitments SecureSync makes to Apex.
So when SecureSync gets their SOC report, how do they handle DataGuard's role?
They have 2 main options: the carve-out method or the inclusive method.
Carve out and inclusive. Okay, what's the difference?
With the carve-out method, SecureSync's system description will mention the use data guard, but data guard's specific controls are excluded from the scope of SecureSync's SOC audit. The auditor's report will explicitly state their procedures didn't cover DataGuard's controls.
So if Apex cares about those data center controls, they need to,
Yeah.
what, get a separate report from DataGuard.
Ideally, yes. Or get some other form of assurance about DataGuard. The carve-out method basically puts the onus on the user entity, Apex, to follow up on the subservice organization's controls.
Okay, what about the inclusive method?
The inclusive method does the opposite. Secure Sync includes DataGuard's relevant control objectives and controls within their own system description. And Secure Sync's service auditor tests those controls at DataGuard as part of the engagement.
That sounds much simpler for Apex. One report covers both.
It can be, but it has a big implication. SecureSync's service auditor must be independent of both SecureSync and DataGuard, and it requires close cooperation. It's often used when the subservice is really integral, or maybe if DataGuard doesn't have its own SOC report.
Can a service organization mix and match, like carve out one subservice provider and include another?
Yes, they can use different methods for different subservice organizations within the same report.
Okay, so that's how the service organization handles their vendors. What about the user entity's role? Does Apex have responsibilities that affect SecureSync's controls?
Absolutely. This is where complementary user entity controls, or CUECs, come in.
CUECs, what are those?
These are controls that Apex, the user entity, must implement for SecureSync's controls to actually be effective. The service organization assumes the user entity will perform these.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say SecureSync processes financial data for Apex. A control at SecureSync might rely on the assumption that Apex will send them accurate and complete data in the first place. Or maybe SecureSync requires Apex to encrypt data before sending it. That encryption step by Apex is a CUE. If Apex fails to do it, SecureSync's related controls might not achieve their objective.
Ah, so it's a two-way street. SecureSync relies on Apex doing certain things correctly.
Exactly. It highlights the shared responsibility in an outsourcing relationship. There's also a related concept, complementary subservice organization controls, CSOCs, which are controls the subservice organization, like DataGuard, needs to perform for the service organization's SecureSync controls to work.
So CUECs are user entity responsibilities, CSOCs are subservice organization responsibilities. Both are things the main service organization relies on.
You got it. And if COECs or CSOCs are necessary for the service organization to meet its objectives or commitments, the service auditor must mention their existence in the opinion section of the report. It's a flag for the reader. Hey, be aware the system relies on controls performed by others.
Okay, there's clearly a lot that goes into creating one of these reports. Let's peek behind the curtain. What's involved in the planning, the risk assessment, the evidence gathering? What are the responsibilities?
It starts with management's responsibilities. That's SecureSync's management in our example. They really drive the process initially.
What do they need to do?
They define the scope. Which services are covered? Which systems? Is it SOC 1 or SOC 2? Type 1 or Type 2? What's the time period? They also decide on the carve-out versus inclusive approach for any subservice organizations.
Okay, setting the stage.
Then, crucially, they have to prepare that detailed system description we talked about and their written assertion. They also need to identify the risks to their objectives and design controls they believe are effective to mitigate those risks. And, of course, provide the auditor with full access people, documents, systems.
Sounds like a lot of homework for management before the audit even really starts.
It is. They also have to provide formal written representations at the end, confirming everything, and disclose any known issues like noncompliance, fraud, significant system incidents, or uncorrected errors found during the audit.
Okay, so what about the service auditor's responsibilities in planning?
Well, first they have to decide whether to even accept the engagement. Do they have the expertise? Are the criteria appropriate? And back to our recurring theme, independence.
Right, they must be independent.
Absolutely. Independent of SecureSync and also of DataGuard, if the inclusive method is used. Lack of independence means an automatic disclaimer of opinion. They also need to agree on the terms of the engagement with management.
And they consider materiality. How significant an issue needs to be to matter.
Yes, and materiality can differ. For SOC 1, it's judged based on what could impact the user entity's Apex's financial statements. General IT controls might be material if they affect financial data processing, for example.
Okay.
For SOC 2, materiality is judged based on whether something could impact SecureSync's ability to meet its service commitments or system objectives related to the trust services criteria. It's focused on the needs of a broad range of users regarding security, availability, etc.
So materiality isn't just a dollar amount.
Not at all, especially in SOC 2. It's often qualitative. Does a control failure create a significant security risk, even if no money was lost yet? Auditors look for various misstatements, errors in the description, controls not designed right, design deficiency, or controls not working right. operating effectiveness deficiency or deviation exception.
Like, if SecureSync described having server security, but the auditor found the security system wasn't actually installed.
That would be a design deficiency, potentially a very material one.
So how do auditors actually find these things? What's the process?
They start with risk assessment procedures. They need to understand SecureSync's system, the services, the risks, the controls management says they have. This involves inquiring of management and staff, observing operations, inspecting documents like contracts and manuals.
Getting the lay of the land.
Exactly. A key procedure is performing walkthroughs.
Walkthroughs.
Yeah, it's basically tracing a transaction like one payroll payment for Apex from its initiation all the way through SecureSync's processing and reporting. You follow its path, looking at each control point along the way to see if the control is designed properly and if it's actually being used.
Following the breadcrumbs.
Kind of, yeah. For Type 2 reports, they then perform specific tests of controls to check operating effectiveness over the period. This involves selecting samples, reperforming controls, inspecting logs, observing controls in action. They determine the nature, extent, how many items to test, and timing of these tests based on risk.
And they look into any problems that occurred.
Definitely. Management has to disclose significant system failures, security incidents, breaches, etc. The auditor evaluates these, considers their impact on the controls, and verifies they're appropriately described. They gather all this evidence, quantitative and qualitative, and assess any deviations or deficiencies found.
What if something big happens after the period ends, say June 30th, but before the auditor issues the report in, like August?
Good question. Those are subsequent events. The auditor has a responsibility to inquire about events occurring between the end of the reporting period and the date they issue their report.
Like what kind of events?
Things that could impact the system description or the controls that were tested. Maybe a major security breach happens in July. Or a key IT director leaves and grants programmers unauthorized access. Or maybe significant fraud is discovered.
Things Apex would definitely want to know about.
Right. If such events occur, the auditor typically requests management to adjust the system description or their assertion. If management refuses, the auditor might have to modify their opinion or even withdraw from the engagement. Some events, like acquiring another company or a natural disaster, might not affect the past control environment and might just be noted.
So there's a window after the period ends where things are still being considered.
Correct. There's also the concept of subsequently discovered facts, finding out something material after the report has already been issued, which requires another set of considerations.
Okay, one last piece. You mentioned management provides written representations at the end. What's the deal with those?
Written representations are basically a formal confirmation letter from SecureSync's management to the auditor.
What do they confirm?
They confirm key things the auditor relied on, that management acknowledges its responsibility for the system and controls, that the assertion they made is accurate, that they've disclosed all relevant information, like known fraud, non-compliance, all system incidents, that they provided full access, and so on.
So it's like a formal sign-off from management taking responsibility.
Exactly. It documents the representations made during the audit and reduces misunderstandings, and they are required. If management refuses to provide them, it's considered a scope limitation.
Which could lead to
A qualified opinion or even a disclaimer of opinion. You can't get an unmodified opinion without them.
Wow. Okay, that was definitely a deep dive. We've gone from the basic what and why of SOC reports through the different types, SOC 1, 2, 3, Type 1 versus Type 2, dug into the trust services criteria, the auditor's opinions, subservice orgs, CUECs, all the way to the audit process itself.
It's a lot, but hopefully it shows how these reports really form a bedrock of trust in these complex outsourcing relationships that are just everywhere now.
Absolutely.
And what's really fascinating is that these reports, which can seem so technical, are fundamentally about managing risk and upholding commitments. They're not just about checking boxes for compliance. They're a real indicator of how seriously an organization takes its responsibilities, especially regarding security and data protection, which ultimately protects you, the end user.
So, thinking about what this means for you, our listener, the next time you sign up for a service online, or maybe your company is choosing a cloud vendor or a payroll processor, think about these hidden layers, this assurance work happening behind the scenes. These SOC reports, they're like the silent guardians of our digital interactions, right? Always adapting to new threats.
That's a good way to put it.
So maybe the provocative thought is this. Now that you understand a bit more about how this trust is built and verified, How might that change how you look at the services you use? Or how you think about corporate transparency when it comes to handling your data? Does knowing someone's checking under the hood give you maybe a different kind of confidence?
Something to definitely think about.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of SOC reports. Until next time, keep digging for knowledge.